Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a full review, an Amouage review at that. One that I've been putting off for a long time, mostly because I needed to have the proper state of mind to do this review. This is one of those fragrances that is extremely artistic, can be very challenging. In fact, I have a story to tell with this fragrance, but first let me introduce it. It is Amouage Figment Man from 2017, created by the great Annick Menardo. Anytime you say the name Annick Menardo, you have to say the great in front of it from now on. That's my rule. And here's the packaging. I don't always have the box, but this is the old Amouage packaging that I so love. And you can see there's almost like a couple realms. There's almost like some real flowers in the background, although they're colored strange, you know, and then there's almost like these golden holographic flowers in the front, which we'll talk a little bit about the meaning behind it. Beautiful packaging in my opinion. I wish Amouage went back to this. I hate the new packaging. They're so bland and corporate. This is so much more Amouage to me. Anyways, that's the packaging. I love it. So here's my story with Figment Man, okay? And as you know, I am a huge Amouage fanboy. In fact, I would not be here talking to you if it wasn't for Amouage, period. I know that in my heart and soul. Amouage is one of the fragrance brands that really brought me into loving the art of perfumery. So anytime Amouage would put anything out, I would buy it. Period. End of story, right? This is 2017. I was in that phase of anything Amouage puts out, I'm buying. But this one in particular, I saw the note listing, I saw the write-up on it, and I went, I'm going to have to sample that first. So that's what I did. So unlike, you know, Imitation and Overture and all these other ones that I just bought as soon as they came out, with Figment in 2017, I remember thinking, I need a sample. I have to sample this. So I got a sample. I wore it to work, and I remember actually being in the office wearing this going, oh my God, this is like, no. How in the hell could you wear this? Like, this is so off the beaten path. You know, and I was at work just I was trying to like hide into the corner because of how Figment smelled. So actually we're going to do a quick reapplication. So what I did is I'm going to bathe in Figment today. So I wore my 2 ml sample and I forgot about it. I said, that's it. We're moving on from Figment. Figment is just one that didn't work for me. That's that. Okay. Fast forward about 5-6 years, 2021, 2022 time frame, I got the itch again, you know? It was one of the old Christopher Chong fragrances that I overlooked. I pretty much owned all the other ones, and I said, okay, screw it. I got a bottle for so cheap at discounters. I was like, it's just worth it, almost to like add it to a haul kind of thing. So I went from no to, I think this is probably Annick Menardo's masterpiece. This is one of her most artistic and most it kind of one of those fragrances that makes you think. All right, it's a very it's art in a bottle, pure art in a bottle. All right. So here's the thing. The first thing is that if you don't like listening to long form sort of reviews on this, I will tell you the Cliff Notes version. Okay, how does this smell in one word to me? This is an earthworm wearing Koros. All right, so that's it. It's an earthworm wearing Koros. And if you know King, the King Koros, Aventus is not king, Koros is king. And this is actually an old Charles of the Ritz bottle from the 80s. So this is when they had the biggest animalis note in there. It actually looks like, you know, a civet pissed all over the front of that bottle from the leakage. Look at that yellow Koros stain. So this is an earthworm wearing Koros. That's my one-liner for Figment Man. Now, so in those 5 to 6 years when I, you know, first tried Figment Man to my bottle, my appreciation for fragrances, I would say as an art form grew, right? That's one of the biggest thing that sort of happened that really changed for me. So the first big highlight when talking about Figment Man is this. If you're still in your phase of wearing fragrances for compliments, if you are looking for a fragrance that, let's say, you want to make a statement in the office of how professional you are, or you know you want someone to give you that you have great taste nod kind of thing, this is not that. All right. To me, this is pure art in a bottle. This is showing what fragrances can do as art. All right. It is not something you're going to wear to the club. I mean, you know, I don't know what kind of clubs you're going to, but 99.9% of clubs, this is not the kind of club you want to, fragrance you want to wear to a club. It's not something that you want to wear to a date. It's not something that you want to wear to a place where you're meeting someone who doesn't know you. They're going to think you're Edward Scissorhands or something. They're going to think you're out of your damn mind, okay? So, no professional settings for this, most likely, is my 2 cents on it. You don't want to wear it to a place where you want someone to compliment you for your taste. You want to wear this, you know, you almost have to treat it as you're going to wear this when you're in your artistic mood. You're going to wear this when you're just going to sit down, spray it on by yourself, and just think about everything. Think about the fragrance itself, or try to use the fragrance to try to think about other things in your life, or situations like that, right? Pure art in a bottle. The other reason that I really like Figment Man is that this is a throwback to the past. This is a pure nod to the past, right? So if you have any understanding of what came before, you have any appreciation for, let's say, vintage perfumery, I don't think you could have an understanding of the past, you know, without noticing the connection between Koros, okay? Some people say Koros smells of urinal cakes and stuff like that. I completely disagree. I think Koros is one of the most beautiful, primal, masculine fragrances ever to be released. And the fact that this came from a designer house, YSL, which is completely crashed and burned, in my opinion, since they released all these amazing fragrances from the past. It is like a bright neon sign, you know, for vintage masculine perfumery from back in the day. And I really respect Christopher Chong and Annick Menardo for putting something like this out. The bottle's also absolutely beautiful with the gradient sort of change. So just gorgeous stuff, you know, blue skies to the green grass and then the soil down below. We'll talk a little bit about all that. But so let's take a detour and let's talk a little bit about the name and sort of the artistic thought process that went into Figment Man. All right. So Chong is one of the most artistic creative directors of all time, in my opinion. I think he's one of the greatest creative directors. If there was a creative director hall of fame, Christopher Chong would be in my creative director hall of fame. I think he is absolutely brilliant. And I think Amouage firing him was, you know, a huge mistake, in my opinion. I've said it over and over again. But the marketing material when this came with a very interesting quote from Christopher Chong. And this is what he said. He said, "Figment is an expression of the Bhutan of my imagination, neither fantasy nor reality. It is an olfactory hologram." Okay, so remember I was talking about the hologram sort of flowers that are highlighted here in gold over the top of it, almost like superimposed over the top of the actual imagery of the packaging. That's kind of where I think some of that's coming from. So he says it is an olfactory hologram. Now, it's an interesting and fascinating quote because there's so much to unpack there. But Bhutan is basically a country kingdom that sits right between China and India. Okay, and it's known for its beautiful mountain peaks. Part of the Himalayas occupy the country. Peaks as high as 7,000 meters. You know. And I can't help but think of this almost mystical, like Shangri-La, Tibetan mystical idealism in Chong's sort of mind while creating this fragrance. All right, that's what kind of comes to mind when I'm sort of trying to put myself in his shoes. Okay, now Amouage goes on to basically describe this, interestingly enough, as a sandalwood fragrance. And if you go to Fragrantica and look at this, they're going to call it an oriental woody or something. No, this is not an oriental fragrance to me. This is much closer to a fougere, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But this is not an oriental fragrance. I completely disagree with that categorization. I would say I could see it as a sandalwood-based fragrance, but we'll talk about the pros and cons. But they call this a luminous sandalwood, all right? And it explores the nuances of a hologram. So far, we have mystical, harmonious, sort of awe-inspiring Shangri-La, and now we have holograms, right? So something that isn't real, something that is imagined, and yet in Christopher Chong's creation, something hypothetical that is sort of brought to real life. In Figment Man, it is no longer just a figment of his imagination. He brought it into being. He breathed life into it, right? Or is it? Or is it just a hologram, you know, a mirage, a reflection, you know? You get the idea of the concepts that he was kind of playing with. And While I will tell you that late in the dry down, your nose may be able to focus more intently on the woody aspects, whether it's the sandalwood that they so focus on, or whether it's the gaiac wood, which is a little bit more of this like burned woody type smell, barbecue wood, if you will. It adds a slight feel of that Amouage old school incense to it. It has a little bit of that you're burning Palo Santo wood or something like that. But the first 4 hours, sometimes even more, to me, and this is about a 6 hour dry down, and it's kind of getting to that point now where you can really start to pick out the woody bits in the base. But most of the fragrance is dominated by what I will just call this animalic accord, okay? This animalic accord is pervasive. It is restrictive to some people at times. It does not go away. It's there from the very beginning. I really get it now that I did the fresh spray. And again, Amouage doesn't describe what this animalic accord is. They just basically say that it is a animalic accord. To my nose, it smells like civet. It smells like the type of civet note that you're getting in vintage Coros, right? You get the pissy, primal, urinal aspects of civet pretty strong here, in my opinion. That animalis civet combo thing. Animalis is a I think it's a Simrise ingredient now, but either way, it's there, right? And it's sort of, at least to my nose, softened by this lemon that I'm just starting to get kind of the beginning formings of that lemon note, which I know bloom as time goes on. But the lemon starts to make itself known more, I would say, in the 15 to 30 minute time spot of the fragrance from my experience. So rather than upon first spray, you're kind of you're not hit with the lemon first spray like you would expect. First spray, so from when I sprayed this 5 or 7 minutes ago, whatever it was, it's really dominated by earthy notes. One of the best earthy fragrances ever. I think Kafkaesque blog mentioned the similarity to zoologist bat. And if you can think of bat with the damp cave and all the weirdness and all this stuff, there is definitely some similarity there. I don't have many fragrances that really do a proper soil note, right? Like an earthy soil note. This is one. This is like I said, this is a very artistic and strange fragrance. So imagine like you wake up to find yourself literally buried alive, a la Kill Bill or something. That's why I said this is like an earthworm wearing Coros. You wake up, you're in the ground, you're in the soil, right? Not just your hands, you are in the soil, you're surrounded by soil, and you slowly try to start digging yourself out, and you realize there's a coffin, right? So you push the coffin and you try to kind of open the lid, and right when you think you're home free, a bunch of dirt and soil just falls onto your face and your mouth, and makes you choke, it makes you cough. And I heard someone describe the earthy opening as throaty. And I will tell you, there is something in here that feels like you have like swallowed soil, or inhaled, like you've ever been like in a dust storm or something, and you take a deep breath in the breaths, the deep breath seems to like get caught in your throat, and you're like you like feel like you're swallowing earth, like it's in your windpipe and it makes you cough. That's the feeling of this earthy opening. It's very, very strange, very, very weird, very, very out there. If you are not in that artistic mindset when you first spray this, you will go, nope, hell no, what the hell is this? Scrub the shit off. You have to put yourself in that sort of mindset. So there is also this feeling of just being completely surrounded by soil, not just like you put your hand in the soil and smelled it, like you are packed in. Soil is literally packed all around you. And if you're claustrophobic, this also may not be the fragrance for you, but soil smells the way it smells to most people because there are these very small microorganisms living in the soil. So here, there is that feeling of aliveness, that feeling of just freshly tilled earth, grub worms on the top of the soil, and it's like a slightly sour smell because it almost has this like peaty, soily, earthy, almost like you're smelling the remains of compost, right? That's the way I would describe it. Almost like you're smelling the remains of compost. And there is also this damp aspect to the way that the soil smells here. And even though I said that imagine smell like a dry Sahara desert dust cloud in your lungs, that's more of a contrast. The majority of the soil note here is a damp, wet soil note. It literally feels as if you're like in Shangri-La digging for gold, and all of a sudden you accidentally like strike an aquifer or something, and the whole ground is just seeped in water, you know, soil that's been seeped in water for centuries and centuries and centuries. And you know, the runoff from the water just sort of makes everything in the area just damp and moist. And you know, that condensation, that water condensation feels like it's on the walls. It's that feeling. And if you go back to my image of being buried alive and sort of working your way out of the coffin, right? This is where probably 15 to 30 minutes in, that's where this lemon and geranium note really start to make themselves known. And they play a big part in the overall, I think, production of the smell, because at least to my nose, 15 to 30 minutes into the life of the scent, that is when it almost gives you this aura of finally coming out of the suffocating, wet, packed soil all around you. And once you just take your first fresh breath of air, your head is above the ground, and you just kind of take this deep, fresh breath of air, and you smell that the air is like lemon scented, and you get little floral aspects in the air. There are flowers growing in the valley, you know, and the geranium is a big part of it. But just imagine, instead of just normal geranium, I said that it was green geranium, right? That's the feeling that I want you to imagine when you think about the geranium note in here. A better representation sort of the lushness of the valley that you just kind of peeked your head up into. The geranium starts to represent some of the fresher side, the part of the flowers that are above ground, if you will. And like I said, it could also be, you could also take this in a completely different direction and say it's a story of a seed being planted and growing and coming out of the soil, and you know, we only see what's on top, but there's also all of this, the roots and stuff underneath, right? Growing and sprouting and all of this stuff. You could take this in so many different directions, but like I said, definitely such an artistic creation. And you have to be in that mindset. Otherwise, you will have the reaction that I had in 2017 to this. It's inevitable. And in fact, if you're new to fragrances, my guess is you probably will have that reaction no matter how well you prepare yourself for it. It's kind of and this is one of the reasons why I never sell fragrances, because your nose literally changes as time goes on. So something that you think is disgusting today, if you smell it 5 years from now, after smelling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of more fragrances, you're going to think differently about that fragrance. Just like right now, if there's something that you absolutely love, you may smell it in 5 years and think, I don't love this that much, because you pick up on other things 5 years from now that you won't back then, you know? So it's an interesting sort of game, the fragrance game that we're in. But that's one of the reasons why I never sell anything, because your tastes change. And if you buy this, you smell it and it grosses you out, you'll just sell it. You know, you'll sell it right away. You'll never get to the point where I'm at now with the fragrance. So the other thing that I found interesting is there is also this almost like granite-like rock that smell that seems to go with the fresh air. So imagine you sort of have your first peak, your head above ground, and you know, you can imagine not only the smells, but also like the sights, what you see with your eyes for the very first time. You open your head after digging yourself out from being buried alive, basically. Imagine the very first thing your eyes set sight on is this giant 7,000 meter high mountain peak in the air, soaring above the valley that you currently find yourself in. And maybe you even need to like climb this mountain on your journey, and you can almost taste the rock in the stone as they like crumble in your hands as you're trying to kind of feel for grippage and reach for places. Or you step in like an unsecured bit of rock and it breaks off, and the rock dust, you know, is in the air, and it just, you know, leaves you with this feeling of like grittiness. You know, that's the feeling that I want you to walk away with, that the rock and the stone sort of counterbalances the earth, because you continue to get the soil note, even when the geranium adds a little bit of that lush greenery and that beautiful fresh floral smell, you know, a little bit of rosiness in there. Even when the lemon sort of gives a little bit of that disinfecting, fresh, clean air quality with the citrusy lemoniness, even after all of that, there's still that soil lurking, you know? There's still that like remnant of soil in the background. Now, let's discuss the sandalwood note. And here, I actually have some real Mysore sandalwood. So this is Mysore sandalwood thanks to Prakar Gupta's company Sherwood, which he has a new fragrance coming out very soon called Artemis, which I cannot wait to smell and discuss on the channel with you guys. I think you can still buy it. I think it's still available on his Instagram. And he has a new presentation for his packaging, which I'm really excited to see. But the sandalwood note here, to my nose, is like a synthetic composition. It doesn't share as much in common with the actual Mysore sandalwood. And this is only Mysore sandalwood heartwood, by the way. So this is about as top quality as you're going to get. You know, being in India, he has a little bit, I think, of an advantage on some of these sort of materials. But it's synthetic. The creation of the sandalwood note is synthetic, but I think it has to be because it has to push past this sort of animalis civet combo thing that the throwback to the Koro style masculine fragrances from the past. So, you know, if you buried a realistic smelling, milky, soft sandalwood note like this in here, I think it would just be buried. And not just because we're referencing soil, but I mean, I think it would literally be buried underneath all these other heavier notes. It would just get lost in the shuffle. It would never sprout. It would never show fruit. And so, especially since this is described, I think, as a sandalwood scent, here, I think it's a mostly synthetic recreation, but I think it's a very well done recreation. And Annick Menardo has a ton of experience as far as creating these woody scents that are very well done. Just think of something like Azzaro's Visit, which I'll review this on the channel one of these days. This is discontinued as well. By the way, I forgot to mention, this is discontinued. Figment Man is one of the Amouages that the Fishman axed, it was probably one of the least best-selling. And, you know, if you had to axe one of the least best-selling, I could completely see this being on the list. But yeah, they axed this. So this is completely discontinued now. It's no longer on Amouage's website, and it shows as discontinued on Parfumo. So this is a discontinued gem review, by the way. So, but if you've smelled some of her woody recreations on something like Visit, you'll get an idea. Annick Menardo uses these woody notes very, very well. She's a master of kind of using these woody notes in a way where they don't smell cheap or synthetic at all. I mean, it is a synthetic creation, but it doesn't smell cheap like some sandalwood notes do. But I do think it has more in common. I do think that Figment Man has more in common with the modern sandalwood fragrances of 2024 than, let's say, the vintage sort of soft, gentle sandalwood that you would get in old school Jean Patou or something like that, you know? If you really, really focus, you know, like, especially in the later dry down. So, like, right now, it's a perfect example. This is like 6 hours in. If I really, really focus, I can pick up on sort of the milky, maybe even powdery, or maybe even like musky aspects of the sandalwood. Of course, it's not as deep and rich as smelling like proper Mysore sandalwood, but which is just so beautiful. Man, you could just put this on before bed and just like, oh, it's just like so meditative, you know? But most of what your nose will get without like further delineation will be the very sharp, angular aspects of the modern sandalwood molecules used. That's just the reality of how this had to be built, in my opinion. So, last thing. There has been a debate among fragrance enthusiasts for the longest time, and fragrance lovers for many years, whether Koros is a fougere or a chypre. And for me, I always lean towards Koros kind of being a fougere structure. And I think this fragrance like reaffirms that for me, because you can much more clearly see the fougere structure here. Here it's a little bit more musky and murky. You know, it starts to turn slightly mossy as the fragrance dries down as well. Vetiver plays a bigger role in rolling up, like building the grass on top of the soil, right? Building that grassy note in the valley. It's funny because most people think of vetiver being on the ground looking down, but from my building of this fragrance, from literally being in the soil to coming out, you know, the interesting thing is, with vetiver, you can see the top of the grass growing above the soil, but that's useless. They don't care about the actual top of the grass. they only care about the roots that are in the soil. That's where the essential oil from vetiver actually comes from. And so it's a perfect fit into a classy old school fougere that has these little mossy vetiver like touches. Maybe even some smoke moss. Maybe even some smoke moss from back in the day, because there is some Gaiac wood in here, as I mentioned, and that adds this sort of smoky woodiness to it. Let me read you the note listing before I forget, because I don't think I ever did that. So the top is lemon, geranium, pink pepper. Middle, sandalwood, animalic accord, and vetiver, with a base of labdanum, Gaiac wood, and earthy accords. Now, the earthy accords, some say maybe patchouli-ish. To my nose, anyways, if it is patchouli, it doesn't take over in a way that a hardcore patchouli fragrance is going to take over. That's why I don't think this is an Oriental. I wouldn't place this as an Oriental, personally. The labdanum maybe adds a little bit of heft to the base, but I wouldn't put this as a hardcore Oriental in my opinion. That's just my 2 cents on it. But for me, I would include this much more as a fougere. So I wasn't able to find like a proper original write-up. I wasn't able to find a proper original write-up from Amouage. And so I can't read you necessarily I can't read you necessarily like a blurb like I could on some of the other fragrances, but yeah, just know that it is discontinued. So Amouage took all that stuff off the website. So, and I don't have anything archived from back in the day. But that's pretty much my thoughts on it. I mean, this is a very tough review for me to do, because on one side of the coin, you know, it's something that I really, really struggled with. On another side of the coin, though, the perfume lover in me sort of really appreciates what they did with this. This is an example of sort of old Amouage, if you will, before the Fishman took over and really made them more mainstream. This is the kind of crazy stuff that they were putting out. This is the kind of stuff that really makes you think. You know, it challenges your assumptions of what a perfume can be. And so Christopher Chong turned this into reality. It's not just a figment anymore of his imagination. It's something that I think goes down as one of the most artistic Annick Menardo creations ever. You know, she's great at doing stuff like this. It's very wearable and all this, but this is really something special, because, you know, I think Annick Menardo did some of her best work with Amouage. Between this and Overture Woman, which I want a bottle of Overture Woman so bad one day. But yeah, go watch my review of that if you really want to hear my thoughts on it. But I'm a big fan of Annick Menardo, and I think they released something that's special for the right person. All right, so you have to kind of be in that hardcore fraghead state of mind. You have to be open and willing to try new things. But Figment Man has really, really grown on me since the first time I tried it and went, no. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Sorry I was away. I was actually away on business for a little bit, so I couldn't do any posting, and then my life being what it is right now, which is crazy. So I will try my best to continue to post regularly for you guys. I love doing these videos, and more Amouage reviews to come as well, because, well, we probably have some Amouage lists, because I'm going to rank the Opus line eventually. I finished all my Opus reviews. So anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on Figment Man if you had a chance to smell it. Let me know what you think of that earthy. Let me know what you think of just earthy fragrances in general. I can't say there are many in my collection that do what this does, but it's a pleasure, as always, doing these reviews for you guys. Thanks for watching. Hope to see your faces in the comments. Cheers. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.